Welcome to my world history notes. Notice I was calling them 1 minute history, but there's a lot of 1 minute histories on YouTube. So I'll just say world history notes. And I'm reading from my book that I wrote for homeschoolers. A Bible believer looks at world history. Um, and it's from the perspective of obviously a Bible believer. So uh, we'll begin on Egypt, Babylon, and Assyria, superpowers, talk about the proto-world language, that kind of thing. So we're going to discuss Egypt, Babylonia, and Assyria and the struggle for dominance in the early part of the second millennium BC, and how this affects the calling out of Abram, who came to be called Abraham by God. Oh, I wanted to let you know, if you want the book, you can get it on lulu.com or amazon.com or the Bible Baptist bookstore. You don't need it. You can just follow along with me here. It's fine. So first, though, I want to say a few words about the city that Abram is called out of, Ur. It was a city of wealth and prosperity, a cosmopolitan city that had influence as far to the west as Egypt and east to India. The Temple of Nanar was the example for all the great temples of the ancient Near East, with, quote, pale blue enameled tiles, while its interior was paneled with rare woods like cedar and cypress, inlaid with marble, alabaster, onyx, agate, and gold. That's from Will Durant and his Story of Civilization. I would call to your mind, by comparison, the incredibly beautiful monuments of Washington, D.C. or New York to give you a comparison. Imagine having God tell you to leave the culture and architecture, the vibrant life and opportunities of New York for something he had promised you, but which you knew nothing about. And now go to one world language for a moment. Back in Genesis 11:1, the statement is made that the whole earth was of one language and one speech. Of the many different linguistic theories about the origins of language, this clear and simple statement would fall under the non-biblical theory of the proto-world language, the existence of which is believed to have been discovered using the science of archaeogenetics, which is the analysis of DNA in archaeological remains. By the phylogenetic, simply a reference to similarity of creatures biologically from an evolutionary perspective, separation of all humans alive today by studying mitochondrial DNA. While not accepting their dating of 200,000 years ago for this to have occurred, we can see how some scientific theories agree with the Bible's statement in this regard. We will find by studying those who studied history that the problems associated with dating can be very confusing. Whether you are discussing Colin Renfrew, who is credited with coining the term archaeogenetics, or the famous Egyptologists, those who study ancient Egypt, such as Flinders Petrie, or the archaeologist Frederick Kenyon and his daughter Kathleen, you'll find a wide disparity in dating Egypt, upon which all other ancient Near Eastern cultures are dated. Now, we're going to talk about next time, some issues about Egypt that are very important. But I want to say one last thing here about Abram in Egypt. In verse 10 of chapter 12 of Genesis, we find Abram, who has now left Canaan, which he had been promised by God, to go into Egypt to be relieved due to a famine that was in the land. He is the first instance of Egypt, later called the iron. Here is the first instance of Egypt, later called the iron furnace, Deuteronomy 4:20, being a place where God's people are nurtured and refreshed, although later they are warned explicitly never to return there throughout the writings of the prophets. Usher dated Abram's sojourn in Egypt to 1921 BC. Finding out the name of who was actually ruling Egypt in the time would be difficult, as the date will vary widely depending upon whether or not you believe Champollion, Wilkinson, Beck, Bunsen, Lepsius, Bruggs, Unger, Liebland, Mariette, Lothmeyer, or any number of students of Egypt. The Encyclopedia Britannica said Amenemhet I, founder of the 12th dynasty, was pharaoh at that time, reigning after a civil war. According to a strict literalist interpretation of the Bible, and according to Usher, Mizraim or Meni, son of Ham, led his colony into Egypt about 2188 BC. According to most traditionally dated chronologies from non-biblical sources, this would have been around 4000 BC. Excuse me. The first verifiable person to the secular historian in Egypt's history would be Imhotep, physician, architect, and chief advisor to King Zoser around 3150 BC, according to Durant. And we're going to discuss a really serious problem with Egyptian history that Herodotus, the Greek historian and travel guide, will tell us about. And we'll talk about that next time. Thank you for watching.